Oh, well, okay, welcome back. My computer had a glitch, so I had to restart the video. So we're back at example 2. We're talking about the percent of Americans who report watching the Super Bowl. This was in 2018. In that sample of 120 people, 45% of them said that they watched the Super Bowl. We decided after our discussion that it would match the 3 or fit the 3 criteria for using the central limit theorem. So we can use this as the mean of our p hats, 0.45, and this is the standard error of the p hats. And so when I put my situation, because we went to find the probability that p hat is less than 43%, if I were to take another sample, what is the likelihood of that happening? So when I put that into my formula, I get a z-score of a negative 0.4404. So to find the probability of this, we're then going to normalize it. And so now it's the probability that z is less than a negative 0.4404. And so we can put that into ALEKS. If you have your ALEKS pulled up. So we can put this into ALEKS, and I can actually just say that, which is really cool. You can just say the z of that. And nope, I want to undo. I'm sorry. I want to take this. Clear. We want to do this, and we're going to put a negative 0.4404. And there is my likelihood. 0.3298. So what this says is that if I were to take a bunch of samples, 32 or about 33% of those samples would have 43% or fewer of Americans say that they watch the Super Bowl. It's a quirky thing to have a percentage in a percentage, 2 percentages in a sentence. So it says approximately 33% of samples would have 45% or 43%, because that was what we're asking, 43% or fewer people reporting that they watch the Super Bowl. Okay. Next, it says find the probability that between 41% and 46% watch the Super Bowl if you gather a bunch of samples. Now, remember, we did one of these back in I should say, back in lesson 4.1. And so 41 to 46 means we're a little bit to the left of the mean and then a little bit to the right of the mean, because remember, 45 is the mean. So we want to know this between. So in ALEKS, to find the between, we're going to find the probability of p hat being less than 46%, subtracting the probability of p hat being less than 41%, because we want to know the difference between them, because less than 46 is all the way to the left, and then we want to cut off this blank space over here that we don't want. So to do that, we need to translate both of those into normalized z-scores like we did in part B, and then find those probabilities and then subtract them. So this z-score here, and then this z-score here. So let's go ahead. We're going to do this one up here for both of these. So let's go to Alex, and we can undo. Keep undoing until it takes us back. There we go to the formula. So everything's already set up. So we can just put in this one is going to be 46 and hit enter. So that z-score is 0.2202. So let's just write that down. And then I'm going to go back and undo again. And then we're going to do it for 41. And that z-score, remember, these are just z-scores. We have to use them in the probability, 0.8808. And so before we do anything, I'm going to clear those out. Nope. I'm going to go back to my paper just so you can see what I did with those. So those are the two z-scores we're looking at. We need to find the probability now. We've normalized them. So the probability that z is less than 0.2202, and then we're going to subtract the probability that z is less than a negative 0.8808. And we want the difference between them. So let's find each of those probabilities separately. I'm going to write them down. Then we will subtract them. So 0.2202. So that probability is 0.5871, subtracting, gotta clear it out, negative 0.8808. And so we're going to subtract 0.1892. So I'm taking 0.5871, taking 0.1892. And the difference is 0.3979. And don't worry, I'm going to show you my paper here so you can see what I wrote. So the probability that you would take a sample of Americans and that the percentage of those Americans that watch the Super Bowl is somewhere between 41 and 46%, that likelihood is about 40%. So 0.3979. Okay, we getting the hang of it? Let's go to question D. All the rest of these are still about the Super Bowl. So it says there is a 10% chance that the sample proportion of Americans who watch the Super Bowl yearly is in a sample of 120 will be at or below. And so this time they gave us area, and we want to find the percentage that that would be. And so that means there is a 10% chance that the sample proportions who watch the Super Bowl at or below. So we're talking the lower 10% here. Okay. So let's mark that lower 10%, 0.10. We have to know that. And we want to know that p hat. So to know that p hat, we have to find the z-score first. Okay. So let's work backwards here. So we are going to find the z of 0.9, because remember, it is z of alpha. In this case, it's alpha is to the right, so that means 90% is to the right. So this is z of 1 minus 0.10. And so let's go to Alex to find that. One minus 0.10. And so that is a negative z-score of a negative 1.2816, we'll say. Okay. And so if we look at that, that z-score is a negative 1.2816. And so we have a p-hat minus this whole thing right here. So this is going to be 0.45, and then this is 0.45 times 1 minus 0.45 divided by 120. So we have to solve for p-hat. So we're going to take and multiply both sides by this thing right here. So it's going to be a negative 1.2816 times this square root over 120. And then will be equal to p-hat minus 0.45. So once we get this, then we just have to add 0.45 to both sides. So let's go work on this in ALEKS. I know I'm spending a lot of times going backwards, but you know, it's already typed in, so it'd be really nice if I could just copy that right there. Okay, so I'm going to take a negative 1.2816 and multiply that by the square root of the stuff that's in there. Okay, so that should be this right here. So a negative 0.0582, and then we're going to add 0.45. I just arrowed to the right and said plus 0.45. So that p-hat should be 0.3918. Now, the method in Desmos would be much simpler in this case. There are things on the in ALEKS that are a little bit more simple, and there's things that are in Desmos. But for now, we're going to focus on ALEKS because that's where we're conducting most of our assignments. So let's go back to our paper for a moment. So it looks like our p-hat would be 0.3918. These are a little bit more challenging, so this is good. You're getting a little alpha practicing. So E says, you conduct a poll of 120 Americans and find that fewer than 32 of them would watch the Super Bowl yearly. Is this unusual? So we're talking about proportions, but we haven't been given a proportion. However, 32 is an X. So if we made a proportion, a p-hat of 32 out of 120, which if you put that in your calculator, would be 0.2667. Or you could just leave it as a 32 out of 120 in your calculator as well, too, when we go to ALEKS. So we want to find the probability of p-hat being less than, because it said fewer than, less than, or, and remember with continuous, it doesn't matter if it's less than or equal to, because it's continuous data. So 32 out of 100. So we need to normalize that. And so that means we have to find the z-score for this. That would be 32 out of 100 minus 0.45 divided by our square root thing that we've been using. First. So I'm going to enter it with that 32 over 100 because that is the most accurate. I'm gonna undo. Okay. Here's my, actually, I can just do it right here. So I'm gonna do 32 divided by 120. There's my proportion and everything else is okay. So I'm gonna hit enter. So there is my z-score. Woo, that z-score is very far away from the center. 4/4 standard deviations, a negative 4.0369. So now we're saying, what is the probability that a z-score would be less than a negative 4.0369? And we're getting pretty good at this, so I can just go right to this, and it's doing that for me. And I'm going to hit enter, and it's very, very, very small. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 7. This is extremely small. So let's go back to our paper for a moment. So this was our z-score. Then we said, what is the likelihood of that z-score being way out here? And we decided to decide if something's unusual if it's less than 0.05. So yes, very unusual. Okay, suppose the scenario above in part E actually happens. Suppose this actually happened. What conclusions might you draw? So if we go back to our last time we went over this, we said one of our conclusions could be, it could just be a fluke. Another conclusion could be maybe the true P is not equal to 0.45 like we thought. Maybe 45% of the people really don't watch the Super Bowl. Or it could be we did not have a good random sample. Those could be my 3 reasons. You'll want to remember these reasons when you go to take your quiz in Canvas for this chapter. So catch me back when we start chapter 7.